Welcome in to another episode of the Barnes on Bama podcast. I'm your host, Owen Barnes, and we have a ton to discuss. Yesterday was a day for the record books for Alabama basketball and football. We had a phenomenal day. I'm going to talk all about it. There was a ton that was happening for both sports. We're going to talk about both wins as well as some additional things you need to know about. So if you're interested, stay tuned for the show because it's going to be a lot of fun today. A couple of quick housekeeping things here up at the top. As you see, I am sponsored by the Believe Podcast Network. That's because of that. If you hear any ads on Apple or Spotify, that is because I am a part of that network. So anything you could do to help out those sponsors, we would appreciate. And finally, if you're new here, subscribe. I would really appreciate it. We're on the road to 1,000 subscribers. We're going to be doing some live streams following some basketball games here upcoming. So stay tuned for that. I will definitely be talking about that in today's episode. But if you were under a rock and potentially missed what happened yesterday, Alabama basketball opened the day with a score of 103-96 against St. John's in Madison Square Garden. It was a phenomenal game, and it was a great day to start off what was a great day of basketball and football for the University of Alabama. I thought that the way that Alabama basketball played in this game was perfect. I will say that there were some things that happened in this game that I fully did not expect. There were some parts of the team that I don't think played as well as I would have hoped, and then some that played substantially better than I would have hoped. And just overall, I think that coming out of this game, I have a lot more hope of this team and what they can be than I did prior to going into this game. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about what Alabama did really, really well. Got the box score here pulled up. Got a few things on that I want to talk about, but then I want to talk a kind of bigger picture about what happened in this game for anybody that may have seen or did not. So, as I mentioned, Alabama does win 103-96. This is a game against Rick Pitino's St. John's team that, last season, as we talked about in the preview episode, was a phenomenal defensive team, was number 2 defense in the country. They did a couple of things really well. They turned you over, they blocked a lot of shots, they got a ton of offensive rebounds. And so I knew that those were going to be some of the keys for today's game, right? Don't turn over the basketball, don't let your shots get blocked, rebound the basketball. Those are some basic things. But additionally, I knew our front court was going to have to play big, and they did. However, the person that played the biggest did not come from the person that I expected, and we'll talk about that in a second. But then additionally, I knew that our guards were going to have to play, within themselves and really be the difference maker in this game. And that was kind of the when you talk about this game, that's what people are going to take from it is that Alabama's guards were incredible. So from a box score perspective, what happened on the stat sheet? Aiden Holloway Aiden Holloway, LeBaron Philon, and Latrell Wrightsell played huge in this game. Aiden and Latrell, you'll know they missed the first game. We talked about it. We expected them to be back in this one. They were indeed back, as we discussed. Nate Oates even gave a shout out to the athletic training staff because of how well they were able to get them back and able to play. And obviously, not only did they play, they played phenomenally well. Aiden Holloway showed some defense that we did not see out of Aiden Holloway last season. I thought that he's taken a real step forward from a defensive perspective. You can tell he's gotten the weight room. You can tell that he's gotten his strength up. His speed with the ball in his hands is as fast as it's ever been. He looks incredible with the ball in his hands. When he got switched onto a big, it was an automatic 2 points. He got him on his hip immediately, was able to finish right at the rack. He goes 7 of 9 from 2, and that was really the difference maker in this one is, Aiden was not somebody that was able to get to the hoop a ton last season. Part of that was due to the fact that you had Philon and Mark Sears, but I think that Aiden in this role has done really, really well. It also, he was able to play, even though, and we'll talk about the fouls in this game, Aiden and LeBaron both had, Aiden actually ends up fouling out of this game, but Aiden and LeBaron had 3 and 4 fouls for a huge percentage of this game. And the fact that they were able to play how they were able to play, I thought was a huge positive for this game. Aiden only shoots 2 of 9 from 3. We don't expect that out of him. He's somebody that I know will shoot better, so I'm not too concerned. Sometimes he goes through these where he just has a rough game, but I would expect he's going to keep shooting lights out. And in the Purdue game, I would fully expect him to really shoot it super well because we do have that Purdue game coming up on Thursday. Then we'll go to Trelly before we talk about LeBaron. Latrell Wrightsell, again, we talked about him being back. I will say there was a little bit of a scare in this one where Latrell Wrightsell actually hobbled off the court. I know a ton of people were freaked out on Twitter and stuff. It was announced that it was just a cramp. He went into the locker room, got some fluids. He was all good. But the fact that Latrell was able to play, he played 22 minutes in this game, shot 4 of 8 from three, 2 of 5 at the rack. Actually didn't shoot the free throws particularly well, which is pretty surprising due to the fact of how Latrell does at the free throw line. He went an entire season without having missing a free throw. However, he gets 4 steals, and I think that's the thing I want to point out because I think that what this team showed us is their ability. Now, was the defense perfect? No. Did they give up 96 points? Yes. However, they give up 96 points with 28 of those being free throws, right? So there's a value in that. Nate Oates would say, hey, you got to defend without fouling. And absolutely, that's something I'm sure that we're going to talk about. But I do think that there were defensive moments in this game that you can definitely take away. We get 9 steals in this game. We over doubled them up from a steals perspective. We get 5 blocks. We beat them in blocks. The fact that we were able to get more blocks and double the steals of a team that was an elite defensive team last year is a huge, huge deal to me, right? Alabama, as we've said, is never going to be the team that holds you to 60 points because we had 84 possessions in this game, right? 84 possessions means if you're holding somebody to 60 points, that's like a point, maybe point 0.8 points per possession, 0.75. That's tiny from a points per possession. And most teams are going to be more efficient than that. When we're putting up a 1.23, it's really just being a better defense than what your offense is giving, right? We're never going to be the Houston that holds somebody to 40 points just because of the number of possessions that we have in the basketball game. That's not super reasonable. So I do think that there's a lot of promise in the fact that we had the blocks and steals that we did. And I think that that's something that you really need to take away. And I think Latrell was a huge factor in this. Again, 4 steals from Trelly. It was a very, very big deal. I think that he was a huge impact on the defensive end. And that kind of goes to what we've talked about all offseason, the fact that he's probably one of our best perimeter defenders. Then you have LeBaron Philon, and LeBaron Philon did exactly what I expected LeBaron Philon to do. If you read my write up either on barnesonbama.com or on my Twitter, when I put up my pregame thread, LeBaron Philon was the guy who I ended up um, saying like, "Hey, I think LeBaron has to have a big game in this one." Right? I think that he just has to. And I thought that the 2 biggest X factors in this game was gonna be LeBaron and Aiden Sherrill. And oddly enough, Aiden Sherrill definitely played an impact in this game, but he was not as big of an impact as somebody else in the front court that we will definitely talk about next. And I thought that LeBaron Philon did a great job, and what he did is he seemed to be able to get to the rack whenever he wanted. He finishes 8 of 12. He hit very timely threes. He had a 3 at the very end of the game to put us up, I believe, 8. Huge deal, or put us up 10. Massive, massive deal. LeBaron was really able to hit timely shots, get to the rim whenever he wanted, and really be the facilitator we know him to be. He was able to get to the rim and dish out. He only finishes with 3 assists, but as we've talked about, some of that's gonna be, how well I think that St. John's closed out. Actually, from a assist perspective, Alabama only got 13. I expect that number to be much higher against most teams. I think that's honestly credit to St. John's. They did a great job closing out on shooters, but at times they were closing out on shooters, and that allowed easier driving lanes, right? It's kind of because they closed out on so many shooters, Alabama shot 60% at the rack, right? Alabama was able to do so much damage inside the paint because of what happened with them closing out on shooters. Alabama did not have a great shooting game. Alabama actually only shot 31% from three. That's going to be one of the lower numbers of the season, right? So Alabama, and I think that's the most impressive part when you're talking about this is Alabama scores 103. They get 14 points at the free throw line and only shoot 31% from three and still finish over 100. When you look at some of Alabama's teams in years past, you're only crossing 100 if you either get to the line a ton or shoot a ton of threes. And the fact that you didn't do either in this game to me speaks volumes about how good the offense is of this team. And that was still missing 2 guys, and we'll talk about those here in a minute. But I'm surprised that I've gone this far before I talked about who I think was the player of the game. Nate Oates, he won the Hard Hat Award from a blue collar perspective. He did not have the most points in this game, but in my mind, he was the most effective guy on the team in this game. and that was Taylor Bowen. Taylor Bowen was challenged, and I talked about it in the all the pregame stuff to this, was challenged by Nate Oates and was basically told he didn't know how to offensive rebound. It was like, he's just not getting any offensive rebounds and this and that. And like Nate had said it over and over and over again. He had said it like 2 or 3 times, both in the recap of the first game as well as in the previews of this game. And Bowen had 4 offensive rebounds in this game, leading the team. He had double, the next best person. He ends up with 5 defensive rebounds. He gets an assist. He blocks 2 shots, gets 2 steals, 5 of 5 down low, hits a huge 3 at the end of the game that maybe was the most important 3 of the game. Was just everywhere on the court. Plays 28 minutes. He was a huge X factor in this game. And the reason why I think that he showed me more than anyone else on this team is the 3 guards that we led the top of the show talking about. All 3 of those guys played within themselves and with what I thought they were capable of, right? Taylor Bowen was a player that did something in this game that I did not know he could do. When I heard that Keaton Bristow was officially going to be missing this game. For those of you unaware, Keaton Bristow rolled his ankle a little before the North Dakota game. That was why he missed the North Dakota game. And then Oates said he was going to be doubtful for this one. He ends up not playing in this game. He was, in my mind, the more physical forward on the team that was not a 5, right? Obviously, Aiden Sherrill is the guy here. Thing is going to be the most physical, biggest. But out of the 4s that we have, I thought that Keaton Bristow was by far the more physical 4, and having Taylor Bowen was going to be a detriment to this game because I personally did not think that Taylor Bowen was big enough to match up with a guy like Zuby Ejiofor. And he proved me wrong. Props to him. And the broadcast even mentioned, and my fiance was laughing about it. They called Taylor Bowen built like a blade of grass, right? Like he's not a huge guy. Ken Palm has him listed at 6'10", 202, which for the record is the same weight that they have listed for Houston Millette. That's 5 inches shorter than him, right? So he is not a big guy, but he was able to defend Zuby Ejiofor, who's 6'9", 245, built much stronger than him. He was able to defend him for large portions of this game. He played small ball 5 and was able to be effective. Nate cross-matched him at times and had him still playing on Zuby even when we had a 5 out there. Like Taylor Bowen was a massive, massive X factor in this game. He was the most important player in my opinion, and the fact that like I said, I just did not know that he was capable of what he showed us. And that's a huge deal, especially going into the Purdue game where they have Trey Kaufman-Wren and they have Oscar Clough that are going to be playing the 4 and the 5. The front court is not going to get any easier this next game, right? This next game has as good a front court as St. John's does. Trey Kaufman-Wren is a phenomenal player. Oscar Clough is a phenomenal player. So you're going to need another big game out of Taylor Bowen, but my ability to think that he can do it is elevated even more just because of what I saw him do in this game. Again, I didn't know that he was capable of it and super excited to see what he was able to do in this one. Another guy that I think we just absolutely have to talk about in this one was Amari Allen. Amari Allen, there was some people that kind of talked about him last, when he was being recruited is I don't know if he's going to play a lot. He played against a bunch of bad people. Amari Allen has shown he's one of the most important players on this team. Simply put, he's one of the most important guys on this team, and Nate Oates trusts him, and for great reason. Amari Allen did not shoot it well. Missed his 2 threes, went 3 of 6 from inside the arc, so that's fine. But he grabs 10 rebounds, and that's a huge deal, right? Having a guy that's 6'8" and can rebound like that at a guard-ish position helps speed up the tempo of this team because Amari Allen grabbing those 10 rebounds, he's leading the break, right? Well, he doesn't need to pass it to somebody else. He has the handles to be able to just go ahead and lead the break. And that keeps your speed up. That keeps your tempo up. He additionally gets a block in this game, a steal in this game, a couple of assists. Huge, huge X factor in this game. Davion Hannah only played 2 minutes in this one because he attempted another poster dunk and unfortunately came up just short and hurt, landed on his tailbone and just, hurt himself and then was not really able to, he played a little bit and came back in, but he wasn't ready, right? At the end of the day, he was hurt. He is somebody that I know that Nate Oates trusts as well. I expected him to have a big game in this one as well, especially after what we saw in the exhibitions as well as the first game. But unfortunately, Davion Hannah did not play a ton in this one. Noah Williamson, London, Collins, they all played. None of them had huge impacts. Noah, I will say, at times got embarrassed in this one. The speed in which we play definitely hurts him, and I will say at times when he was matched up on Zuby, it was bad. It was really, really bad. If you had asked me, Aiden Sherrill's in foul trouble, who's the more effective 5? Taylor, Noah, or Collins. I definitely say probably Noah over Taylor, maybe Taylor over Collins, but just not sure. Like Taylor was by far more effective than the other two, and it wasn't close, right? Again, Taylor Bolbowen showed me something in this one that I am very, very, very proud of. And I think that going into this Purdue game, that is a huge confidence booster on what he's capable of and as well as what he can do for this team. And I think that is a very big deal when you talk about having Purdue coming into town on Thursday. So that's what happened in the St. John's game. Like I said, there was a ton that happened in this game. I think that Alabama played really, really, really well in this one. The fact that Alabama led kind of start to finish, there were a couple of moments where we got down by 1 point, 2 points. But really, for the majority of this game, Alabama led and was very in control of this game. They get up by 12 at the very end of the game. St. John's is able to claw back and make it a little closer where it's a 7 point game. But in reality, Alabama had complete control at the end of this game. I really was impressed with what Alabama put on the floor. I think that when the next AP ranking comes out, Alabama's going to be a top 10 team. This is going to be a top 10 matchup in Coleman Coliseum on Thursday. If you are not already planning to be there, try to be there. It's going to be a massive game. I of course, will be in attendance for this one. I'm very, very excited. I'm actually probably going to take my camera and maybe shoot some video at the game and kind of the vlog almost of going to the game. So if you're interested in that, I'll probably put it up on the channel. Going to do some editing on it, and I think that's something I want to do for this game because it's going to be a huge matchup in Coleman. I'm very, very excited for Purdue coming to town. So, as I mentioned, we talked about this Purdue game a lot. I will, of course, do a pregame. We'll do a pregame thread of that one that will come out Thursday morning. I will do a video that I'm probably going to record maybe tomorrow to put out Tuesday. Yeah, I may go ahead and record it tomorrow and put it out Tuesday, just so that you guys can have a Purdue breakdown thread. I have something that I do on Tuesday evenings, so probably easiest for me to just go ahead and record it tomorrow. May put it out tomorrow night, may put it out Tuesday morning. Just stay subscribed to the channel, turn on your notifications, and you'll be aware of whenever I do that Purdue breakdown. I'm very excited for this game. It's going to be in Coleman. Additionally, something I think I do want to start doing is I'm going to start doing some some post-game reaction shows. So for the games in Coleman Coliseum, obviously, because I am going to the games, it's gonna be a little bit more difficult just because I have to get back from Coleman. I live about 20 minutes, 25 minutes from the arena. So some of those may be a little later, but especially for some of these away games, like the Illinois game in Chicago and some of these others, I want to do some reaction streams here on the YouTube channel, have you guys come in, ask questions, talk about the game. I think it would be a lot of fun. So stay subscribed to the channel. I will go ahead and put out any of the ones I'm going to do that. I'll put out a premiere so that y'all know I'm planning to do it. And then I'll just set a time that, hey, this is around when it's going to be, but just know it's going to be a reaction to the game. And I'll try to go live as quickly after the game as I can. Obviously, the away games are going to be a little easier because I'll be watching those from home. And then the home games, of course, I just need to have time to get back from Coleman. But I think that would be a lot of fun. So if you're interested in those, go ahead and let me know down in the comments. There have been a lot of reports coming out, and if y'all are unaware from a basketball recruiting standpoint, I just feel like this needs to be in this episode. Caleb Holt, top 5 player and former Alabama player, now in I believe he plays at one of the academies, right? But Caleb Holt, top 5 player, number 1 player in the state of Alabama, was on campus again on Saturday for the LSU game. This is like his 6th visit to Alabama. He's had 5 unofficials and an official visit. This is one of the top people that Nate Oates and Preston Murphy are trying to get committed for next season. I'm hearing that that is potentially nearing a possibility, right? where like they're trying to work out all the details, and there is a possibility that we hear some great news regarding Caleb Holt and his potential future at Alabama. Obviously, I will let y'all know as soon as I hear anything, but I am starting to hear some rumblings that like they really got him on campus because they're trying to get stuff worked out because early signing day or early signing period starts for basketball here very, very soon. So some of the reports are potentially trying to get him into that early signing period if at all possible. Additionally, somebody that, Alabama fans need to be aware of because, let's just say that I really like where Alabama stands at the absolute minimum, is a guy in Caden Samuels. He played um, at Bishop, which is an academy. Again, another one of these, big academies. And Caden Samuels is an elite shooter. He's a 6'7" wing, and he's a lefty shooter. And he was actually a top 5 scorer in the EYBL, which is the Nike circuit. Just elite AAU player, top 20 recruit. So Alabama potentially has 2 massive, massive recruits coming. Caden Samuels, I feel phenomenal about. I will say that much. And then Caleb Holt, definitely starting to feel better about. He's one that everyone is after. So I definitely not sure exactly what to think. Don't want to get my hopes up too much, but I definitely like the direction that we're heading in with Caleb Holt. So, hopefully we hear some information as it relates to Caleb Holt soon. But like I said, those are the big ones that you need to be aware of. Obviously, Alabama already has committed Terrace Bowie and Chris Washington. So you already have 2 guys committed for this class. You get 2 more. Obviously, that would be great for the class. And then I'm sure Nate will bring in some transfers, and that would be kind of to round out your class. But that is what you're looking at for this upcoming season. Again, stay tuned. I'm sure on Twitter there will be news breaking as different stuff starts coming out. But Caleb Holt was in attendance. A little bit funny tidbit about that. I think you guys might find interesting. Nate Oates and the staff were at obviously the game in Madison Square Garden, and then he does press after the game, and the team had some delays with their flight, and they weren't able to get back to Bryant Denny Stadium until around mid to around halftime. So a lot of questions were, "Hey, Caleb Holt was supposed to be attending, like, is that okay? Like, what happened? Like, the team got delayed." Well, apparently, Preston Murphy is an absolute gangster, and Preston Murphy had scheduled a private flight, potentially with a booster, I'm not exactly sure with who, but flew back from New York early without the team so that he could be there for Caleb Holt's arrival. So, Caleb Holt was not at the stadium by himself. Preston Murphy made sure to get there. Again, this is one of the biggest recruiting battles that we've been in quite some time. This is a huge one and would be a top 5 player in this class. So Preston Murphy pulling out all the stops, making sure that everything goes to plan, and again was able to be in Bryant Denny Stadium for Caleb Holt. Was able to make it by kickoff. So definitely very excited to hear that. We'll see what happens as it comes to the recruiting news, but just something I think that y'all might need to be aware of. Let's move to the LSU game, and I actually want to start the LSU breakdown with an ode to Chris Stewart. I was at the LSU game last season with my fiance, and his breakdown and how he ended the radio broadcast last season, I think is a very fitting way to start this part of the LSU breakdown because Chris Stewart is an absolute gangster and was just an elite way to kind of end the broadcast. So take it away, Chris.
Just enough time to get down your fiddle, get down your bow. They hardly beat Saban. Apparently can't beat DeBow. We're back after this on the Crimson Tide Sports Network from Learfield.
Yeah, so as you heard, obviously Chris Stewart playing a little fun with Louisiana Saturday night. Uh, just absolutely incredible. I thought that Alabama winning this game, and for anybody who missed the football game, Alabama does win by a score of 20-9. Uh, Kind of a weird score, but all that LSU was able to really get going in this game at times was their field goal kicker. Um, and even Alabama at times, this was not the cleanest game by any stretch of the imagination. Alabama, of course, does win this one, but this was not a game that I think Alabama feels great about. Obviously, anytime you get a win, it's good, but I don't think that I think that the first half of this game went about how I expected. I just thought that in the second half of the game, Alabama was gonna be able to get a little bit more going on offense, and unfortunately, they just weren't able to. Alabama was not able to be as comfortable as I thought they could have been, and some of that were just Ty Simpson was making certain throws, and they were just a touch short or just a touch long, and, that definitely impacted this game. Ty was pretty fed up with himself at times. The broadcast was talking about it. This was he passes for 277 yards and a touchdown, doesn't throw an interception. So, in the grand scheme of things, it's definitely not the worst game by a quarterback of all time by any stretch. But, Ty was just definitely still upset by himself because he does think that he left some throws out on the field. And of course, sure, he did. But I do think that this is a game that Alabama can learn a lot from. I think that that's when you're looking at this team, as I talked about in the pregame, this is an LSU team that is still a good team, whether or not they, had to fire their coach or whatever, right? This is still a good LSU team that has a lot of talent, and that talent was on display, right? Aaron Anderson, elite receiver, Xavier Thomas, was pretty good in this one. Barron Brown, Nick Anderson, right? They had plenty of guys that kind of made certain catches, certain plays in this game, but Alabama did a good job holding them down pretty well. They did have one long rush that really, skews some of the rushing numbers. Harlem Berry has 12 rushes for 66 yards, one of those being a 37-yard rush. Obviously, you don't want to give up the explosive rush, but overall, I thought that the way our defense played, you can't be upset with because I think our defense was obviously the winner in this one. The defense was the difference maker in this game. They gave our offense short fields, and, you know, Alabama in general was able to do really well on defense. When we're talking about kind of the things that I'm gonna take away from this Alabama game with LSU, the biggest thing that I'm gonna take away is that Yonze Pierre continues to be an absolute animal. There's no other way to put it. Yonze Pierre causes another forced fumble. He has 2 sacks in this game, and Yonze Pierre, game in and game out, has continued to be just an absolute one-man wrecking crew. He forced the fumble on a 3-man rush, so the fact that you can get home with just 3 guys rushing and keep 8 in coverage was just insane. I think it's a very, very big deal to have a guy like Yonze Pierre out there. We talked all offseason, asked Clint Lamb about it and all kinds of people we talked to, and it was, how is Alabama going to get the pass rush? Was it going to be LT Overton? He had a ton of almost sacks last season, but wasn't able to really finish off too many. And then when Quay Russaw gets hurt, we're really concerned about what the pass rush looks like. And the fact that Yonze Pierre has kind of stepped into this role and is dominating kind of at the level that he's able to been dominating, that's a very, very, very big deal. He's earning himself a lot of money this season and very excited what we're seeing out of him. Additionally, um, Bray Hubbard, forces a fumble in this game. Really excited to what we've been seeing out of Bray. Obviously, we talked about that Florida State game at length, and then since that game, Bray Hubbard has played just lights out. He's probably mad at himself that he dropped a little bit of an interception. It wasn't exactly in his hands, but it was one that he probably still wants back. I think that was close enough. He could have caught it, but wasn't a full on drop or anything. And just in general, I think that Alabama's defense definitely had some really big factors that played solid games in this one. Deontay Lawson and Justin Jefferson, lead the team in tackles. They've continued to get better and better and better as the season went on. Lotzir Brooks was good from a kick return perspective. Cole Adams, was great from a punt return perspective. Your kicker did miss one field goal that was a chip shot, which was really poor, but both kickers kind of pulled very close kicks to the left. So I don't know if it was just a nerves thing, if it was there was something else happening on the field, but overall it was what it was. Our punter continues to be a weapon. I haven't mentioned him in any of the other games, but I feel like I need to because downs all 3 of his punts inside the 20. None of them were super long punts, but Alabama had was never punting from inside its 10-yard line or anything. So that was completely okay. Obviously, you want it inside the 20 and you get that, you're very happy. Additionally, I just think that Alabama, the big thing that if you're going to look at a negative for this game is that Alabama cannot rush the football. Simply put, Alabama cannot rush the football. We're averaging 2 yards a run right now, and that includes a 17-yard run by Ty Simpson. We average 2.2 yards a carry. that's just not gonna cut it, right? Simply put, it's not gonna cut it, and that's a problem. I think that Alabama is gonna have to do something to get better running the football. I know that in general they're doing some trickeration, some different things to see if they can do some other offshoots of the run. At times, I thought the trickeration was okay. At times, I did not love the trickeration. There were times where it really felt like Ryan Grubb was getting too cute on offense and he was trying to do a little too much. There were times, just overall, this was a weird game. And the way that I explained it to somebody else is I think that this is a game that I will remember how good John Pierre was, and if I remember anything else about this game, I don't know if it's anything, right? If you asked me to remember multiple things about this game, I just don't know that I remember multiple things because really the fact that, Jan Pierre continues to be an animal, gets a forced fumble, I might remember that. I just don't know that I remember anything else because granted, were there some, did Ty hit a deep ball to Ladzier Brooks? Sure. Did he make a decent throw to Ryan Williams? Of course, right? Like Ty definitely had some solid throws in this game. But overall, nothing really jumped out at me as overly spectacular, overly crazy in this game. It just kind of felt like a ho hum game. And with Oklahoma coming to town, I don't know if this is a standpoint of a potential look ahead of Oklahoma coming to town. If this is a situation where LSU fires their coach and you hear, oh, they fired their coach, they must be bad. Like, I don't know what it is, but this just felt like a very monotonous game. It felt like a very weird game. Overall, I do think, I'm very happy with the fact that Alabama gets the win. I'm happy that, Ty Simpson, he's going to be upset that he has the fumble. Again, this is a situation where I think that one probably could have been avoided. Ty probably could have stepped up in the pocket and maybe not put himself in jeopardy there. But overall, I think that, we didn't make a ton of mistakes in this game. So, you have to be happy about that. But overall, it just felt like even though a ton of mistakes were not made, definitely some big plays were left out on the field just by some slight overthrows and such. And then the fact that Alabama just shows an inability to run the football, it just felt like your defense did exactly what they needed to do. They got you the football back when you needed it. The offense was able to convert, at least at times. Um, Ty in the 2-minute drill is absolutely incredible. I saw a stat. He has 42 points this season through through 8 games. Oh, yeah, no, 9 games. He scored on it's actually, I guess, 7 now. 7 of the games he scored in the 2 minutes. So just insane how good Ty is in 2-minute drill. And at times, I think that is it almost feels like we need to go a little faster. I understand that we're trying to hold the ball, and that's more to do with what we want to do on offense. But at times, Ty in the 2 minute seems like the best version of Ty because he, is just making the decision and ripping it and trusting his arm talent to get it where it needs to be. And I thought that Alabama was able to convert on that in 2 minute in this game, and that was a huge deal to go up 17-3 into half. But I think that overall, I think that Alabama just needs to continue to work on the run game, needs to continue to work on, just the tiny things that you're missing from a timing perspective with Ty and such. And, you got a big game coming in on Oklahoma. Oklahoma's a great defense. Oklahoma, has definitely struggled a little bit on offense since Mateer's injury, but they're going to be coming off a bye. And so he's in theory going to be more well rested. He's going to have been able to practice some of the things that he's having some trouble with post surgery. So I am very curious to see what this Oklahoma team looks like. We will, of course, do a breakdown of Oklahoma. I will put it out for everybody. We will do a recap of Oklahoma as we always do. So, stay subscribed to the channel. And if you're not currently, go ahead and subscribe because we have a lot of content coming up with Oklahoma. We'll talk about the Purdue game, talk about the Oklahoma game. So there's a lot of stuff coming up this week in the life of Alabama. Some huge matchups here in Tuscaloosa. So go ahead and subscribe if you are not already. Thank you so much, everyone, for watching. I really do appreciate it. As I said, we're on the road to 1,000 subscribers. So if you could try to help us get there, we're trying to get there as quickly as we can. Really do appreciate it. Thank you so much, everyone, for watching, and I will catch you in the next episode. Peace.